morning and welcome everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the people on whose land we are filming today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome also to our panellists who are remote. Firstly, Jim Gibbons, President of the Retirement Village Residents Association, also known as the RVRA, and Nalika Padmasena, a solicitor at Seniors' Rights who works with retirement village issues. Today we're going to cover what is an RV, how do the contracts work for them, what does Seniors' Rights Service do with RV residents, what does the RVRA do, and what are some of the common issues that people find. After that, we'll turn to questions from our audience. So just to begin, Nalika, can you describe what a retirement village is, please?
Thank you, Diana. First of all, I need to mention that this is information only, not way of form a legal advice. So simply speaking, it is one of the accommodation options available in New South Wales. It is a complex containing residential premises that are predominantly or exclusively occupied by retired persons over 55 who have entered into a village contract with the operator. The most important thing is that the person has to be over 55 and has had entered into a contract with the operator that gives rise to the resident's right. The resident right is right to occupy the premises. The retirement village is independent living. Therefore, the presumption is that the person will be able to live independently, both mentally and physically. A retired person in this regard is a person who has reached the age of 55 years or has retired from full-time employment. As we all know, 55 years of age means most of us are still in employment. So therefore, either working full-time or part-time is not a restriction to live in a retirement village. The laws governing the retirement villages are state-based. The relevant New South Wales legislation is the Retirement Villages Act 1999. And this applies to all retirement villages in New South Wales. And I already mentioned that it is independent living and therefore similar to living in your own home, but it is in a communal setting.
Thank you,
basically,
Nalika.
When you are entering into a retirement village, it means that you are entering for the lifestyle and the services and facilities that the village provides.
Thank you, Nalika. Jim, would you like to add your perspective on retirement living, please?
I think the important thing, Diana, to follow on from what Nalika was saying was that when you go into a retirement village, aside from strata title and company title places, you're normally entering into a lease. So you're not buying something outright, and the terms of occupancy can vary pretty considerably, and for that reason it's important that you get proper advice from an experienced solicitor. I don't mean just legal advice, I mean a solicitor who's familiar with the retirement village laws. And extra important is that when you're considering a move like this, that you involve your partner, your advisors, your adult children, so that they can give their perspective, because they need to understand what you're doing. When the day comes that you leave the village, they don't want a shock. They don't want to be surprised at what terms and conditions you entered into. So that's important that you do your homework in that way.
Thank you, Jim. And what do you think would be some of the advantages in particular of living in retirement village?
The nicest thing about retirement villages is that in many respects you can do as much or as little that you want. For example, maintenance and repairs, painting, lawn, garden care, all that sort of thing. You can look after a garden space if you want to, but you don't have to. You can mow your own lawn if you want to, but you don't have to. So that's a big change from living in a home that you rent or own, where you're responsible for maintenance. But the other important thing is your neighbourhood structure changes. When you live out in the general community, your neighbours might be old people, young people, people with young children, people with dogs, people with teenage children who like to party, and so forth. When you move into a retirement village, it's much more homogenous, and your neighbours become more like you. And so they have similar interests to you, similar experiences, the same aches and pains probably, and also they provide a pretty good, stable companionship environment. Many villages have facilities that suit your ageing work style: libraries, pools, bowls, rinks. But the important thing is village life generally promotes caring communities. People have similar outlooks, similar needs to you, and they tend to form caring communities that look after one another.
Thank you very much, Jim. Nalika, can you describe how the contracts work in retirement villages?
Okay, so I mentioned that a prospective resident needs to enter into a contract with the village operator. The essential fact to remember is that the retirement villages are completely different to the aged care facilities. So there is a retirement village standard form of contract. However, there are different types of contracts with differing obligations. I cannot emphasize more that aside the company title or strata title, the resident is only purchasing the right to occupy the premises in the retirement village under either a long-term lease, short-term lease, loan license agreement, or rental agreement. So different types of contract mean they all have different obligations that instigate, particularly at the point when you are moving out of the village. Some village contracts offer capital gain entitlement. This could be either 50 or 100%. Whatever the percentage is, the capital gain entitlement is a crucial factor in calculating the resident's obligations when you are moving out of the village. One of the important elements is once you enter into a retirement village contract, it provides the tenure protection to the resident. This means the operator needs to seek an order from the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal to terminate a resident contract. If anyone intending to enter into a retirement village contract must seek independent legal advice. Again, I cannot emphasize enough to talk to a solicitor who understand the application of the Retirement Villages Act.
Thank you, Nalika. And so what does Seniors' Rights Service then offer residents exactly?
Well, Seniors' Rights Service, we are a resident advocacy organisation. We are a statewide specialist legal centre with unique holistic service provision that include legal service, aged care advocacy, social worker and a community education. So Retirement Village Legal Advocacy Service provide legal advice and assistance to residents of a retirement village to resolve issues with the village operator or the management.
Can you give us some examples of those sorts of cases that we might deal with at Seniors' Rights?
Mm-hmm. So the residents contact us, when they contact us, they may not necessarily have an issue with the RV operator. They may require clarification to understand the terms of their contract or clarification of an application of the legislation to such issues. So what we do in terms of providing, we encourage, provide the legal advice, and then we encourage either the residents individually or with the residents committee to resolve the matters with their operator before escalating it to a tribunal matter. We respect both residents and the operator need to coexist to survive the industry. So, however, operator must respect the rights of the residents living in the village, particularly to exercise their autonomy and to live with reasonable peace and comfort.
Thank you very much. So, Jim, can you give us a bit of a description of what the RVRA does now, please?
Yeah, Diana, we fulfil a different role to that of the Seniors' Rights Service in that the RVRA is composed exclusively of retirement village residents. So we understand what it's like to actually live in a village, and that gives us the opportunity to provide advice based not only on what the different resources available are if you need help, but also advice on what it's like to live in a village. And that gives people a really good perspective when they have a question about their rights and obligations. We're the only organisation that focuses exclusively on retirement village matters. We advocate to government and policy makers and the community generally about the interests of village residents, and we inform and educate residents about the laws that govern their occupancy in the village. But we're not only constrained to talking with village residents, but also we're prepared to talk to prospective residents, people who are thinking about moving into a village. And we do this by inviting them to join the association as an associate member, so that over time they can get a feeling, it's part of the homework process that I referred to before, over time they can get a feeling for what the issues are in retirement village living.
Terrific, thank you. And what would you advise your fellow residents are the important things to consider before they go into a retirement village?
At the risk of sounding like a cracked record, legal advice, legal advice, legal advice. But in line with that, legal advice from a lawyer who understands and has experience in retirement village matters, because there are plenty of traps or tips that will help you navigate through the process. You enter into a village normally at a lower cost than buying a comparable dwelling outright, as you would when you buy a house or a unit, but there is an exit cost when you leave the village that you have to take into account. It's called the deferred management fee, and depending on the length that you stay in the village, it can be really substantial. That's why it's important that children and partners have to understand the transaction. Get them involved, take their advice, but at least explain to them why you are moving into a long-term lease at that stage of your life, because when you leave the village, perhaps you've passed away or you're no longer able to care for yourself. You don't want a shock process to happen with your carers, your children, your estate, when it comes to leave, perhaps after 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So it's important to involve your innermost advisors when you take this kind of move.
Thanks very much, Jim.
Sure.
I think that gives a really clear picture. What we'd like to do now is go to questions from the audience. I'll be taking those on my phone. They're being sent through to me. The first question is bullying in villages. What can you advise about that? I guess this would be a question for both of you, really, in a way. Nalika, is there a legal solution to bullying in villages, or is that more a Jim question?
I mentioned that so once you enter into a village contract, the operator must respect the rights of the residents living in the village. So, well, we need to look at the facts and also advise the individual accordingly. So I would actually suggest them to contact the Seniors' Rights Service, the legal team, so we can look at the aspect of the situation and also and advise accordingly. But the main point is that everyone living in the village, this applies to residents as well as the operator. Everybody must respect the rights of other residents as well as the staff and the operator.
Thanks, Nalika. Jim, would you like to add anything to that comment, or?
Yes, Diana. Look, we've recently had some changes to the legislation, and we've had introduced rules of conduct for operators. Amongst those rules of conduct are a requirement for operators that they respect the rights of residents, they treat them fairly and in the best interests of the resident. So they have an obligation, a legal obligation, not to bully, and further than that, they have an obligation to assist in mitigating the effect of bullying between residents.
It's different.
So there's plenty that can be done in that situation.
Thanks very much. So the next question, what is a definition of fair wear and tear in regards to villages? I think, Nalika, that's probably for you.
Okay, it's coming back to the maintenance and repairs, and so generally, again, the retirement village legislation provides reasonableness. So fair wear and tear, it's taking into consideration the length of time, the nature of the premises or the village, and taking into consideration the other aspect of the living conditions in that circumstances. So coming back to again, it's the circumstances. Like, I would actually advise the resident or the family member to contact the Seniors' Rights Service, and we will be able to get the information and advise accordingly.
Thank you. Next question. Has legislation been passed to pay out vacant units after 6 months in the city and 12 months in the country? And if so, is the legislation grandfathered? Nalika? No,
the changes to the legislation is before the Parliament. It's not adopted or passed yet, but we are hoping, both Seniors' Rights Service and the Retirement Village Residents Association are working with Office of Fair Trading in this regard. Our strong lobbying is not to make these changes grandfathered, but hopefully it will, the changes will come into effect soon.
Thank you. Another question, the new village asset management plan, when is this due to be presented to village residents?
Would you like me to comment on that, Diane?
Yes, please, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah, look, there have been discussions about this Greiner inquiry recommendation, and we've got some way down the track to determining what details will be involved, but there's been no final decision been made yet by the government. To some extent, discussions about asset management plans were put on hold for two reasons. The advent of the coronavirus pandemic, which has shut many things down, but also the fact that we've been working so hard on the exit entitlements issue, and we've just about resolved that. The government's in fact made a public announcement about what the new laws will encompass. We haven't seen the legislation yet, but we know broadly what they'll do. So asset management plans, I would imagine discussions will start up again as soon as we can get out and about and meet people. There's still a fair amount of work to be done.
Thanks very much, Jim. The following question, how are LGBTIQ residents protected from discrimination if they go into an RV? That's probably more for Nalika, or, well, it's for both of you, really. Nalika, would you like to take first?
Well, it's again coming back to the reasonable respect the rights of the residents. retirement village living is independent living. It's like living in your own home, and the operator has an obligation to respect the rights of the residents, but also in the same time, the residents, when you are entering into a village contract, you have an obligation to respect the rights of other residents living in the village. So this comes back to the respecting residents in their own personal capacity. The residents have a right to exercise their personal autonomy over their personal and financial affairs. So also it's coming back to the basic human rights. A person's has a right to exercise their own belief system, and also the it comes back to the personal autonomy.
So if someone had a problem with that, would they come to us, or would they go to the Anti-Discrimination Board?
Well, there are a few options. Yes, you can seek advice from our legal team. It can be either the Retirement Village legal team, or we do have, like as I explained, Seniors Rights Service has a broader older persons legal service. You can seek advice from the legal team, as well as you can reach out to the Anti-Discrimination Board or
Thank you for that one. Where can I find a list of operators in a specific area?
Diana, there's a couple of places that you can go. First of all, you can go to the Fair Trading website. Retirement villages in New South Wales are required to be registered with Fair Trading, and on their website they do have a search engine which you can search by suburb or postcode, and you will be able to search a list of registered retirement villages in those postcodes or suburbs. There are also commercial services which provide information and quite a lot of information about individual villages. Again, you can search by postcode or suburb. One of them is villages.com, and as I say, fairtrading.gov.au is the Fair Trading site.
Thank you very much, Jim. Last question, is it? I believe. No, there's a few more. There always seem to be changes to RVRA laws, or RV laws, I would think that should be. Why is that? Who would like to answer that? Is that one for you, Nalika, really?
I can.
Jim, okay. Thank you.
I just 3 years ago, we had some unfortunate press for retirement villages, and as a result, the government implemented an inquiry into the sector, and that inquiry was chaired by Catherine Greiner, AO. She made 17 recommendations about improvements that could be made to the retirement village industry, and she did that in December 2017. So in the succeeding 2.5 years, we've been constantly, RVRA and SRS, have been constantly involved in negotiations with government, with the operators, about the implementation of those recommendations. So there's been a steady stream of changes to the legislation, and that's why people get the impression that we're always changing. It's not quite that bad, but the last 2.5 years have been very busy.
Oh, thanks, Jim. That clarifies that. This one might also be for you. Are there any additional considerations moving into an RV where construction is in its early stages of building?
Yeah, well, this is a pretty big topic, but when you're moving into a retirement village where the village is continuing to be developed, the obvious things would be the noise and dust and so forth that comes from living next to a construction site. But understanding how much more development is going to take place in the retirement village is also important, because you want to be aware that the services and facilities that are available in the village will become less and less available as more and more people move into newly developed units. So you have to take that into account and satisfy yourself that the services and facilities, the gymnasiums, the libraries, the swimming pools, the tennis courts, whatever it might be, that those facilities are going to be adequate to cater for the needs of the expanded village.
Thank you, Jim. Next question. The new retirement village operators code of conduct, Nalika, you referred to this earlier, says that the operator should have a dispute resolution process. Is this a standardised process, or is it up to each operator, and how does it work, broadly speaking?
Well, after the code of conduct, it is becoming, it is advisable for the operator to have the internal dispute resolution procedure, because that's where the issue is, and it is advisable for them to resolve that before it's escalated to the tribunal. So therefore, particularly whether the village has a residents committee, that's something the residents and the operator can work together. But it is advisable for the village operator to have a dispute resolution method within the village.
Thank you.
Diana, can I just
yes,
add
would you like to come in? Yes, certainly.
Just to say that if the questioner is interested in the actual rules that govern dispute resolution, and they're mandatory, they could go to Schedule 3A of the Retirement Villages Regulation 2017, Schedule 3A of the regulation.
Terrific, thank you. One very current question. How have retirement villages been affected by COVID? I might go to Jim first on this, and then after that we'll just take one more question, as we'll be needing to wind up. Thanks, Jim.
It's been very interesting. The public health orders that have been made in response to COVID-19, I've always taken the view that the residents' health overwhelms the contractual rights to the facilities in the village that residents have. So what's happened has been during the lockdown, so to speak, some of the facilities have been restricted in retirement villages, so that if, for example, you might only allow one person to use the gym at a time, and then for cleaning protocols to take place after that, or the swimming pool or the tennis court or whatever other facilities there are. The other thing is, of course, there's record-keeping obligations on the operator to be able to trace people who visit the village. But the interesting thing is that I'm only aware of one coronavirus infection in New South Wales retirement villages. And that says to me that villages have proven to be pretty effective safe havens for this kind of situation where we have this pandemic. Retirement village residents are generally a lot more conservative. They're a high-risk segment of the population, remembering that the average age of village residents is 80 years of age, and the average age of entry into a village is approaching 75. So I think we as a group of people have been really smart, but we've had to put up with restrictions just like the rest of the community.
Great, thank you for that, Jim. I have one more question, but before I do, I just might say that We'll put up some contact details in a minute for the Retirement Village Residents Association and for Seniors' Rights Service. But the last question, probably for both of you, maybe Nalika. I understand that there are admin fees that replace strata fees or council rates, and they can be quite large. Are these fees regulated in New South Wales, or do they vary with each RV? Perhaps we'll go to you, Nalika, on that one.
Yes, so this comes under the budget process. In the budget is for the 12 months period, the running cost of the village, where the residents pay an recurrent charges, how the operator expected to spend that recurrent charges within that 12 months period. So part of the budget, it could be an administration cost. Then yes, it is regulated in the legislation as well as the Act. The operator must clarify if there is a head office administration fee included in the budget, that to what proportion and in the what category, as to how these costs related to the services and facilities provided within the village reflects. So therefore, the operator must provide the information to the residents in terms of approving the budget, and the residents have a right to ask questions in that regard.
Thank you. So again, if you've got further questions, because we're not able to answer any more today, please email or ring either Seniors' Rights Service or the RVRA. And thank you very much for participating in our webinar, and to both our speakers for their invaluable knowledge today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've now got the RVRA number up on the screen for you to write down, 1300 787 213, or Google RVRA. And now we have the Seniors' Rights Service number up on our screen, 1800 424 079. Thank you again, everybody. Please don't hesitate to contact either organisations if you have any more queries. Thank you.